Good evening. I am your guide through a sombre chapter of Victorian Britain, an era of great progress, yet one that cast long, dark shadows. In the minutes ahead, we will carefully examine the life and crimes of Amelia Dyer, a name that has become synonymous with the darkest corners of human nature. Please proceed with care. The details of this story are distressing and speak to a profound tragedy. Imagine for a moment a quiet morning by the river. A bargeman going about his daily work pulls a sodden parcel from the water. He expects discarded rubbish, perhaps. But inside, a small, almost imperceptible clue is found. A clue that would unravel a web of deceit and expose one of the most prolific and chillingly methodical killers in British history. That single careless mistake is how Amelia Dyer, a woman later dubbed the Ogress of Reading, finally met her downfall. To understand how she became this monster, we must rewind. Amelia was born in 1837 in a small village near Bristol. Her childhood was far from idyllic. She was the youngest of 5, and her early life was defined by caring for her mother, who suffered from severe mental illness brought on by typhus. Amelia witnessed violent fits and the slow, painful decline of the person who should have been her protector. This early exposure to suffering may well have hardened her. For a woman of her station, the choices were starkly limited: domestic service, factory work, or marriage. But Amelia was literate and intelligent. She chose a different path, training as a nurse. She married George Thomas, a man much her senior, and later, after being widowed, William Dyer. But it was her nursing career that proved most formative. It gave her a veneer of respectability and, crucially, access to vulnerable new mothers and their unwanted infants. In an era of rigid social codes, the shame surrounding unwed pregnancy was immense. The 1834 Poor Law Amendment Act had made matters worse, absolving fathers of financial responsibility and leaving desperate women with no support. Into this void stepped the baby farmers. On paper, it was a form of private adoption. A woman would take in an infant for a one-time fee, promising to find it a loving middle-class home. In reality, it was often a death sentence. The fee incentivized the baby's quick demise, either through deliberate neglect, starvation, or worse. Amelia Dyer saw a lucrative business in this desperation. She began placing advertisements in local newspapers. They read, "Respectable married couple wish to adopt a healthy child. Nice country home. Father's business requires their moving away." The wording was carefully crafted to inspire trust and explain why the child would vanish from the area. A good home is assured. She requested a substantial lump sum, anywhere from £10 to £80, a fortune at the time. Desperate mothers, often meeting her at train stations, would hand over their babies along with a small bundle of clothes and a heart full of fragile hope. But once she had the fee, any pretense of care vanished. At first, she let the infants perish through neglect, but that was slow and drew attention. She soon escalated to more direct methods. To evade suspicion, she became a phantom, constantly moving and adopting aliases like Mrs. Harding or Mrs. Thomas. She moved between Reading, Caversham and back to Bristol, always staying one step ahead of concerned neighbours or the law. When the authorities did get close, she would feign breakdowns, checking herself into asylums. These stays served a dual purpose. They provided an alibi and reinforced her image as a troubled rather than a malevolent figure. For decades, the system failed to connect the dots. Paperwork was thin, coroners were easily fooled, and the poor, disenfranchised mothers of these lost children had no voice. Though she was eventually convicted for a single murder, the true scale of her crimes is staggering. It is believed she was responsible for the deaths of hundreds of infants, perhaps over 400, over a period of nearly 30 years. It is a chilling, almost incomprehensible number. Her downfall finally came in March of 1896. Near Reading, a bargeman pulled that fateful brown paper bundle from the River Thames. Inside was the body of a baby girl, Helena Fry. White dressmaking tape was still wrapped around her neck, but the wrapping paper held the key. A faint, greasy impression of a name and an address was visible, a careless, crucial oversight. Detective Constable Anderson of the Reading Borough Police painstakingly traced it to a Mrs. Thomas, one of Amelia's many aliases. The police set a trap. They used a young woman as a decoy who answered one of Dyer's ads. When Dyer answered the door, the police moved in. The raid on her home uncovered no bodies, but the evidence was overwhelming. Stacks of baby clothes, dozens of letters from mothers pleading for news, pawn tickets for children's belongings, and notebooks meticulously listing fees and names. There was no gore, just the cold administrative horror of her enterprise. The river was dredged and more tiny bodies were found. Her trial began in May 1896. Amelia stood in court, a stout elderly woman with a flat, emotionless expression. Her defense attempted a plea of insanity, citing her time in asylums. But the prosecution painted a picture of a calculating, profit-driven killer. Witnesses recounted the newspaper ads, the hurried handovers, and the subsequent total disappearance of their children. The jury was not swayed. They took less than 5 minutes to return a guilty verdict. On June 10, 1896, at Newgate Prison, Amelia Dyer was hanged. Before her execution, she gave a full confession, stating, "You'll know all mine by the tape around their necks." A final, chilling admission to the scale of her crimes. So why does this grim story matter today? Because the shock of her case forced a reckoning. It led directly to stricter adoption and child protection laws, better systems for birth registration, and greater scrutiny of the deadly trade that secrecy and profit had allowed to flourish. Her story serves as a stark warning that when societal desperation meets systemic indifference, the most vulnerable will always pay the price. It shows how easily predators can thrive in the shadows cast by shame. A research note for those exploring this case: one must be careful to verify sources. The Victorian press was prone to sensationalism, and many details have been mythologized over time. But the core truth remains undeniable. Amelia Dyer exploited a broken system for personal gain, and because of her, hundreds of families never saw their babies again. As we close this chapter, take care, take breaks if you need them, and remember the countless victims whose names we will never know. Please subscribe for more content. Thank you.